Distinguished colleagues, an announcement. This is addressed to the Senate President. You will recall that the Senate, at the sitting on Tuesday, 27 February 2024, resolved to constitute an ad hoc committee to investigate alleged incidences of corruption and inefficiency at the Ajakuta Steel Company Limited and the National Iron Ore Company, NEOMCO. Consequently, a meeting of the ad hoc committee is scheduled for today, Wednesday, 28th of February 2024, as follows. Meeting room 221, New Senate Wing, NAS Complex, time 3 p.m. This is signed by Senator Adeniyi Ayodele Adegbobihira. And I thought this should be a senior advocate of Nigeria. But, yes, so signed. So please, members should note. Distinguished colleagues, notification of foreign trip. Well, just to inform you that some of our colleagues are in Barcelona on an official trip. So I don't think it's a big deal since it's part of the Senate activities. Birthday announcement. Today, 28 February, is the birthday of distinguished Senator Issa Jibrin. On behalf of the Senate, I wish distinguished Senator Issa Jibrin happy birthday, long life, prosperity, and many more years of service to our fatherland. Congratulations. Distinguished colleagues, leader of the Senate. Minority leader. Distinguished colleagues, just brief changes. The new vice chairman of the Committee on FCT is distinguished Senator Ositangu, who is also one of the leaders. The new vice chairman for the Committee on NDDC is distinguished Senator Patrick Ndubweze. The new vice chairman for the Committee on SDG is distinguished Senator Jaribe. Any petition? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Sunday Marshall Katu. I represent the people of Kaduna South Senatorial District. I have a petition here written by the law firm of UC Uparagu and Co. on behalf of one Yakubu Gaku Mbaka, alleging unlawful termination of appointment by Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited. With the kind permission of Mr. President, I seek to lay the petition before the Senate.
Yep. Go ahead. The petition is referred to the Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions to report back to the Senate in 2 weeks. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the first business of the day on the National Assembly Budget and Research Office Establishment Bill 2024, SB 363. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Assembly Budget and Research Office Establishment Bill 2024, SB 363, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, National Assembly Budget and Research Office Establishment Bill 2024, SB 363, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the second business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Umar Shehu Buba on the Federal Orthopedic Hospital Management Board Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 364. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal Orthopedic Hospital Management Board Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 364, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Federal Orthopedic Hospital Management Board Amendment Bill 2024, SB 364, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the third business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of most distinguished Senator Onyewuchi Ezenwa Francis on the National Population Commission Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 366. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Population Commission Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 366, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, National Population Commission Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 366, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Olamilekun Adeola Solomon on the Agricultural Processing Zones Establishment Bill 2024, SB 367. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Agricultural Processing Zones Establishment Bill 2024, SB 367, first reading.
I support. Based on the fact that he's a lawyer. I supported him because he's a lawyer, and you guys call us laymen. So, if a learned person says so, then the learned man, the layman will say yes. Educated man, okay.
He's merely educated.
We are all educated, but we are not learned, as you say.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, I don't think it's something that we argue about. Yes. Distinguished Senator Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my dear colleagues. Henry Seraki Dixon, Bayelsa West. Ordinarily, as the Chief Whip said a short while ago, Mr. President has the power to hire, and therefore, it goes that he has the power to also fire at any time. But where by statute an approval of this Senate or the National Assembly is required before the President so fires, usually there is a proviso connoting misconduct. I just want clarification from the leader whether the law he's referring to that governs this appointment and the removal by the President, whether the removal is predicated as it is in some legislations on misconduct. Now, if that is so, because as you know, Mr. President and my dear colleagues, before you remove a justice of the Supreme Court, you remove INEC, you remove this, the law says yes, you can hire and therefore you can fire, yes, but on misconduct. The only caution and clarification I'm seeking from the leader is, if by this law that we are referred to here, there is an imputation on misconduct. Now, if that is so, then this Senate is entitled to know the grounds. This Senate is entitled to know the facts that has led Mr. President to arrive at that conclusion. Because if we don't know about all those overall factual developments, if the law says misconduct, if the law does not say so, Mr. President can hire, Mr. President can fire. So we give the approval to Mr. President to fire. But we didn't hire him for the President. But my concern is, Mr. President, if there is an allegation of misconduct, if the law says the President shall remove him on misconduct, and that before doing so, the approval of the Senate or the National Assembly shall be procured, then in that event, this Senate will be entitled to know the totality of facts alleging the misconduct, the proof thereof, and the need for us to accede or not to accede. So I just want the leader of ours to throw more light on the legal situation governing this bill. Thank you.
Is it Senator Osidangu?
Osita Ungu, Enugu West. Mr. President, I think just making a reference to the letter from the President, he referred to the relevant sections which he is basing his letter on removing the officer in question. I would like to refer us to the FCCPC Act 2018, Section 8(1)(b, that the President refers. Section 8 said a commissioner may be suspended or removed from office by the President if he, I'll go straight to B, has demonstrated his inability to effectively perform the duties of his office. In the same act, I know there's, as Senator Dixon said, there's an area of misconduct, but the President is not basing the removal of this officer on misconduct. He's basing it on B, inability to effectively perform his office. And since the President, it is not the Senate to know whether this person is performing or not. The President who has the authority, we are expecting the President to perform. The buck stops at his table. So if a person is not performing to the expectation of the person who is harassing the person, I think the President has, I urge the Senate to approve the President's request. Thank you, sir.
Let me thank all the senators for their contributions. In mere labor practice, he who hires can fire, and it's difficult to force a servant on an unwilling master as far as the law is concerned. But here, the provision is very clear. If the Senate's job is to approve the request of the President, not to investigate the request of the President. And luckily the section of the law is very clear that the person could and can be removed from his inefficiency to perform his duties. And who measures the efficiency? It is the principal, in this case, Mr. President. So I want to thank all for their contributions. Ours is to either approve the request of the President, or if we have any reason not to, then we can say we do not approve. Then in which case we have to communicate the reasons to the President. As far as all the arguments are concerned, there is no reason for us not to approve the request, because it is aimed at strengthening his government and ensuring more efficiency. So I'll put the question. Distinguished colleagues, will the Senate approve the request of Mr. President for the removal of Mr. Babatunde Irukera as the Chief Executive / Vice Chairman of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission? Those in favor of the removal say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Therefore, Mr. Babatunde Irukera Mr. Babatunde Irukera's removal, as requested by Mr. President, is hereby approved. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day is the consideration of a report on the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency Act Amendment Bill 2024. Distinguished colleagues will recall that this is a House bill for concurrence and was meant to be referred to the Committee of the Whole yesterday following my lead debate. Distinguished colleagues will also recall that Mr. President, as his presiding officer, had hinted that just before referring this bill to the Committee of the Whole for consideration, he would like copies of both the extant law as well as the proposed bill to be made available to distinguished senators so that they could have both of them available for their clause-by-clause consideration. So, Mr. President, I wish to inform that copies of both the extant law as well as the proposed bills are available for the consideration of distinguished senators. And based on that, Mr. President, I will most respectfully move for the bill to be read the second time so that we'll be able to proceed to the Committee of the Whole. Thank you, Mr. President.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion that the bill for concurrence should be considered as moved by the Senate leader. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that this bill be now read a second time. Those in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency Act, Cap N30, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004, to strengthen the operations of the agency, empower the agency to establish laboratories, update the list of dangerous drugs, review the penalty provisions, enhance the power of the agency to prosecute drug-related offenses, and issue subsidiary legislations, and for related matters 2024. Second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to amend the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency Act, Cap N30, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2024, to strengthen the operations of the agency, empower the agency to establish laboratories, update the list of dangerous drugs, review the penalty provisions, enhance the power of the agency to prosecute drug-related offenses, and issue subsidiary legislation and for related matters 2024. Second reading taken. Yes, Leader of the Senate. This was earlier referred to Committee of the Whole yesterday, so you proceed to move a motion for us to.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, pursuant to Order 78, Sub 3 of our rules, I move that the bill be now referred to the Committee of the Whole for consideration. I so move, Mr. President.
The Minority Leader.
I second the motion moved by the leader that the bill be referred to the Committee of the Whole for consideration. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved that this bill requiring amendments of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency Act, Cap N30, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2024, be referred to the Committee of the Whole for clause-by-clause consideration. Those in support of this motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So we proceed now to Committee of the Whole. Distinguished colleagues, this, the Deputy Senate President, I hope you are with us. I approach the chair. I won't mention the name of the leader, and I won't mention Sani Musa. The distinguished colleagues, just my personal observation. I want to draw your attention to the fact that this bill is very, very important. This bill is very, very important, and the bill will live after us. Unfortunately, the bill is like an architectural drawing. Where the architect makes mistake, it lies forever. But if a doctor makes mistake, it is buried under the ground. So we cannot rush it. I want to just draw your attention to just two items I noticed when I was perusing through this. So if you go to page 4, section 13. You don't have a copy? Ask the clerk to give you a copy. Cornell. It was distributed yesterday. Have you got a copy now? No, but I was asking Senator Larry if he has a copy now. Okay. Now, if you go to section 13, sought to be amended, any person who is unlawfully concerned in the storage, custody, movement, carriage, or concealment of dangerous drugs or controlled substances, and who, while so concerned, is armed with any offense, weapon, or is disguised in any way, shall be guilty of an offense under this act and liable for conviction to be sentenced to imprisonment for life. This section, as indicated here, creates a strict liability provision. And this strict liability provision is further confused by the word concerned. How are you concerned? Page 4. So please just read. How are you concerned? So the word concern is subject to numerous interpretations, and definitely may even result in a lot of injustice, because, and then it's also creating a strict liability offense here, where Senator Abiru, you are an accountant, we are talking law. So listen. We just Olamileko, open to that section. Page 4. Page 4. Section 13. Any person who is concerned, are you not concerned about the affairs of your children? That's what I'm telling you now. That I think we should take time to go through it, so because that's one. Then, if you look at on the same page, you look at section 14. Section 14 of the Principal Act. Section 14 of the Senator Adaramodu. Did you look at section clause 4? Okay, you are not even on your seat. Okay. Section Ayodele, San. Ayo. San. Look at section, no, sit down. Look at section, amendment of section 14, 12. Section 14 of the Principal Act is amended by inserting after the word years the words without an option of fine. On issues of, and then the other one is about consent and talked about movement. So, and then that means that if it's a strict liability offense, if there is a juvenile that is innocently connected in any way, the person will go for life imprisonment. And the same thing goes with page 5 of section 13. When you look at the B part, it says, inserting the word years, that is where you ought to have certain years of imprisonment. They will say that there was without an option of fine. I said we are creating strict liability provisions, and sometimes the essence of law is not only to punish, it's also to reform. So here we are not giving any opportunity for reformation. And then we are not even, it will be difficult for even the judges to interpret the meaning of consent. And then they mention movements, and So I'm thinking, the leader of the Senate, that it's, but with the things we have noticed, that we not be in a hurry. We should study this carefully, and then when we come back to consider it, we do a thorough job on it, and if need be, we can even get some legal consultants to advise, so that we don't create a law that will imprison everybody, because if, we don't. In law, we believe that it is better for 100 criminals to go free than for one innocent person to suffer for a crime he did not commit. So, but what we are doing here, everybody will go without any option of fight. But I leave it to the floor.
Mr. President, sitting at chair, I think we should be well guided by the opinion that you have rendered, because of the implications and the importance of this bill as it concerns citizens. The consideration of this bill can be deferred to enable senators properly digest the content of the amendments that are proposed, to make proper informed opinions in our subsequent meeting. I'm not sure that we want to be in a hurry to pass a law that will endanger the liberty and freedom of other Nigerians. And so I want to support the opinion that we should defer this consideration until maybe next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, to enable members consider and go through the paper.
The distinguished Deputy Senate President.
Mr. President, sitting at chair. Mr. Chairman, let me thank you for your legislative vigilance. This is something that we should commend you for seeing these a kind of, I will call it anomaly. Yes, illicit drug, consumption of illicit drug is something that is a bane of our society, something that we need to fight head on. But then the laws that are to deal with these challenges, the challenge we are facing in this country, has to be well tailored, has to be well structured. But passing a vague law such as this will amount to, in future, putting those who are not to be punished in a state of punishment, and probably those who are to be punished are left free. So this is very vague, and more work needs to be done on it. We need to do more work on this. So I also told your line that we should stand it down and give time for us to restudy it very well, so that we can deal with it the legislative, or maybe next week. I also submit.
Yes, Ayo, San.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as the chair. I think that it's important that we fully appreciate the difference in two things. There's the punitive aspect of the law, which is separate and distinct from the definition of the offense. Now, the word concerned is the one that defines the offense, which I think is the greatest problem, because concern could be anxious, it could be troubled. So it's a bit of, when you talk about criminal liability, it can be a bit tricky as to when you are caught by this, and sort of has a very wide net. I think that removing that word and changing it would probably define the offense. Now, the second part of it is the punishment, which is life imprisonment. In other words, if you are found to be guilty, then this is a punishment. Now, the punishment says life imprisonment. That, for me, is debatable to the extent that what exactly does the parliament think is an appropriate punishment. There are other crimes where the punishment is death, and I'm not proposing that. And there are other crimes where the punishment is imprisonment. So I think it's important that we differentiate the two. Let us first talk about the definition of the offense, which I think is the one that is a bit unclear, and which is the one that could visit unnecessary resultant effects on citizens of Nigeria. I do agree with you, Mr. President, sitting as the chair, that it might be important for us to go and take a proper look at this act again to see that the offenses that are properly defined, so that anybody that is caught by it actually knows with clarity what the offense is. I thank you very much.
The senior advocate of Nigeria has spoken. It's the view of everybody. Senator Ekong, you have something to add? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Ekong Samson, Akwa Ibom South. The chairman, I'm very, very delighted to be on the floor to contribute to this matter. And I think principally, outside what we are faced with now, this will give us room to do some soul searching. I'm of the opinion that not only in respect of this bill, whenever we are faced with this kind of situation, the floor should have ample time to look at the very basics of the law. Because just as you've clearly outlined, a mistake made can have very grave implications. So outside this, whenever we are faced with this kind of situation, we should have ample time, do some research, and come up with what will clearly stand the test of time for law and jurisprudence. Yesterday, we were very emphatic about the scourge that drugs has unleashed on this country. Lives have been lost. The future of our youth have been put in serious jeopardy, as it were. And yes, an issue was made earlier that this is a concurrence from the House of Reps. But Mr. Chairman, we are not bound to agree hook, line, and sinker with what comes from the House of Reps. This is, I mean, much as we are co-travelers in the part of lawmaking, we have ample space, we have ample latitude to look at the very dynamics of lawmaking, so that at the end of the day, whatever we come up with can stand the test of time and can fully meet the demands or the dynamics of public inquiry. So I agree that we need time to go back, look at this bill, look at the basics of law and punishment. I mean, I'm one of those who clearly cite the fact that we have to discourage the abuse of drugs in this country, given the damage that that has done. But even more important, we as an institution, we must always take time to scrutinize whatever we do, so that whatever we come up with will stand the test of time. So I agree that maybe the standing committee, this can be referred to the standing committee, can have a second look, streamline the basics of law and jurisprudence, so that at the end of the day, this very, very important item meets the very dynamics of public inquiry. Thank you.
Yes. You need to know that this is actually a bill for concurrence, and it is taken for granted that our colleagues in the House of Representatives had gone through the due process, including a public hearing and all that before arriving at this. But because even if we send something to them, they also have a right to look at it in case there were certain things we missed. And then, so we also have a right to look at it in case there are certain wordings that may become amorphous and cause confusion. What is facing us now is that we are creating strict liability provisions that anybody, even if you are in a car and a banned substance is found in that car, if nobody owns up, all of you are going to prison, life imprisonment, because of that word, consent. because you were concerned since you were within the car, the premises of the car. And then it added movement and all that. So I want to agree with the Deputy Senate President and all those who have contributed that we should take time to look at it again and then come up with something, and particularly what the Senior Advocate of Nigeria said. I pointed out that definitions are very key. So definitions are very key. So let's know, so that by the time you engage in any of these acts, you know what offense you are committing, and then you also know what punishment you are going to get. Senator Garba, do you agree with us?
Thank you very much, the Senate President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Garba Musa Maidoki, Kebbi South. It's on, sir. The President, the Senate President, I entirely agree with what the suggestion you make. Even though I'm not learned, but I know when the law is enacted, it concerns even the unlearned people. So this is a period where young men want to experiment in universities, in secondary schools. I think it is important that in these bills, we make segregation between those who sell and those who uses, and the punishment should not be uniform. And I think we should even quantify the quantity, how many grams that lead you to life imprisonment. And otherwise, a boy will be caught with one very little thing for his personal use, and he will be sent to prison for life. Thank you, sir.
This is Senator Garba. Whether they like it or not, I agree with you. Because if an elder has only one small marijuana, and the other person has a pail of marijuana, why should you share the same punishment? Is that not what you are saying? It's such a very serious issue. So if you have one, I think did they call it jot? If you have one jot, and then Olamilego has up to has up to 2 pails, why should you go to life imprisonment with him when your own is very small? That's what they are saying. So we should look at the grammage, we should look at how much, what quantity, and all that. But it is one thing is certain, that we must scrutinize this thing, because it's a lifesaver. It involves, it affects the future of Nigeria. Drugs are part of the reasons why we even have insecurity. And drugs, the underlying tone is that even the drug abuse in the country is on the increase, and then we must do everything possible to ensure that we craft the law in a way that will not that will stand the test of time. Yes, Senator Sadiq, so that we wrap up.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sitting as chair. I am Sadiq Suleiman Umar. I represent the good and decent people of Kwara North. Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, my interest is very simple. I mean, people talk everywhere in this country that why do we need 2 houses, in the legislature? It's a popular debate. We run a bicameral legislature because of circumstances like this. That's the basis. And I think this is a case that we need to take serious and go back and look at. Even though this law has passed in the House of Representatives, this is why we are also here, to be sure that laws we make today can stand the test of time. That's why we run this double system. That's what I just want to bring to our attention. Thank you very much.
You are saying that we are in order. We are in order. The same Senator, most of us are you.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Salim Mustafa, representing Kwara Central. Distinguished colleagues, I want to draw our attention to the fact that there are still means in which these younger ones, or those who engage in taking these drugs, also find their easy or get an easy access to this drug in the areas of even the pharmaceutical industries or shops where prescription drugs are being sold as illicit drugs for them to use. I also want to align with Senator Medoki about classification. We should put it more in classification because it's a global practice whereby certain amount, or if you are found with certain grams of drugs, they have punishment in different classification so that we don't give a uniform classification. Some people, you find them with drugs, the purpose of that drug might not be for the illicit abuse. It might be for prescription, but the same drug can also be used for abuse purpose. So I want us to look at this so that when we are dotting the I's and we are crossing the T's, we should also expand our scope, especially in classification for the punishment that will be given to some of these people. Thank you very much.
Senator Adaramuro.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as the chair. I just want to draw our attention to that section 13, the word concerned. When we talk about that word concerned, connotatively used, because even in manslaughter or murder, we have involuntary manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter. So the concerned can both go for voluntary and the voluntary. Like a case in the US just of recent, a boy of 14. Okay.
You are saying that the word concern, like in a manslaughter, that you have voluntary manslaughter, and then you have involuntary manslaughter. But in this one, so you may have voluntary consent and involuntary consent. That's what you are saying. Even that on its own is the reason why we must look at it again, so that we don't force a problem on the courts, and the courts will, because not all judges will know like you are explaining. You would have made a very good judge that you can have voluntary consent, involuntary consent, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. But remember what Senator Mustafa said, that in other crimes that there are classifications of even the what another senator pointed out in terms of the grammage, the quantity. Some quantities are for export, while some quantities are for self-use, and may even be related to illness, and therefore, ban or not ban, punishments should be segregated. And so the blanket life imprisonment for anything connected with drug is something that is already here. That's why it's important we go back and look at it. But go on what you're saying.
Thank you, Mr. I am very happy that you understand what I'm saying, that while reconsidering, that we have to take note of that and then do our judgment based on that. Then secondly, the issue of life imprisonment without option of fine. I think the drafter of this original act or the amendment is informed by the fact that when you fine at times, somebody who has maybe exported or is exporting about 50 kg of heroin, for example, and then you now give him an option of fine of say 1 million naira or 200,000 naira, then he will pay. It's outside, then he can continue with the business. It is not more than fine. Maybe that is the reason why the drafter of this clause has just put us in mind to make sure that, look, when you are going to jail, you are going to jail, and you will know, because the punishment has to be severe in a form to deter fully, because we cannot partially deter. If we partially deter, it means that the barons will be on it and forever, because when you know that you are caught, you will pay only 100,000 naira or you pay 250,000 naira. They will have the money in their pocket waiting for a judge to rule and tell them to go and pay fine. That is the reason. So when we are reconsidering, we have to ensure that even if there's going to be an option of fine, then that fine must be seriously described fine, not meager amount. It should be tied to even the market value of that kind of illicit drug that person has imported or exported. So that's what I want to.
What you are saying answers the reason why we have to go back and look at it. Because we are saying there must be classification. Because you cannot allow somebody who is a drug baron to bring illicit drugs and then you go and give him option of fine of 200,000. And that means the person will go home and continue the business. See, in some places, engaging in drug trafficking is actually death sentence. A lot of Nigerians have been killed in places like Malaysia, Thailand, and others. Yes, a lot of Nigerians have been killed. So we cannot make our law in such a way that it allows people to come in and do what they like and flood the country with drugs. That's the truth. So even when we are still, it's just that I don't know how far you want to go because this is Parliament. For me, I believe that there are certain classifications after you look at the damages that should actually go for death sentence. We were able to cop a lot of kidnapping in the South region when we insisted that kidnapping should carry death sentence. Kidnapping for ransom, it should carry death sentence. And I signed it. I signed in my state. I signed a bill into law carrying death sentence because sometimes they don't just go to kidnap. They kill before they succeed in kidnapping the person. Some time ago, a judge was kidnapped and the orderly was shot dead. So when the person does that, and then you go and give option of fine, the person will go back into kidnapping. Am I right? So we have this drug thing is so serious that we have to look at it again. And then I commend the House of Representatives for even thinking of these amendments so that they can make it more watertight. But at the same time, we must now, as elders, look at, the classifications. But we must come up with something that would be a deterrent, and at the same time ensure adequate punishment. Senator Mongunu.
Distinguished Senate President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Mr. President, I totally concur with you in your observation of the way and manner the definition section of the offense is couched. Mr. President, distinguished senators, there are two approaches to interpretation of laws: the literal approach and then the liberal approach to interpretation of laws. And in drafting legislation that concerns sentences that carry death penalty without option of fine, the wordings in the definition section should be very clear and unambiguous, to the extent that the courts in interpreting the laws will give that provision their ordinary and literal meaning. But as it is now, the word concern is subject to different interpretation, and as such the courts cannot give it its ordinary and literal meaning to the extent of carrying a penalty of death penalty without an option of fine. So, Mr. President, I think the clerk of the National Assembly, and in this case the clerk of the Senate, should strengthen our legal department so that our drafting should be elegant. Elegance of drafting. In the past, I know the legal department with the National Assembly sends them to one institute in London. Even the clerk in 1992, when I was a member of the House of Reps, was sent to that institute in London for a course on legal drafting. Mr. President, it will interest you to know that the clerk is my mate. We are called to the bar the same year with him, so I know him very well. He was a staff in the legal department when I was a member in the House of Reps in 1992, and I can recall that he was sent to that institute in London for legal. We are together with Senator Oji Uzo Kalu, he was also a member of the House of Rep in 1992. So I think there is a need for us to train the legal department on legislative drafting so that our legislations, our drafting should be elegant and should convey the ordinary and literal meaning of the words that we put in our legislation, especially in matters that concern strict liability like death penalty without option of fine. Thank you.
The clerk, if you are among those that were sent to London in 1992 for legal drafting, do you need refresher course? Why do you bring, why do you allow us to consider a bill without looking through with your experience of legal drafting? Because it's about legal drafting. Before getting to us, I think we should have concluded that aspect of tinkering with this. The distinguished Senator, Senator Oshomole.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, my distinguished colleagues, I thought, sir, that you have summarized the issue, namely that every law that passed through the Senate should have the benefit of each and every one of us going through it, and it is not for nothing that we are expected to have legislative assistance. And I agree with distinguished Senator Sadiq that the whole essence of maintaining bicameral legislature is to ensure that if an error slipped through one arm, as the national, in this case the House of Rep, we are not obliged to rubber stamp it. I'm happy, Mr. President, that you reminded us of the laws we had to pass when we were governors. My observation is that whereas the executive passed those laws to provide for death sentence for kidnappers and armed robbery, etc., when the court uphold and interpret those laws correctly and sentence people to death, it is on record that most governors were unwilling or unable to assent to the judgment so that those involved are sentenced to death. As a consequence, we have so many people today sentenced to death, but they have not been executed because the governors that passed those laws are unable to find the courage to sign death warrant. I had to sign death warrant. I also granted pardon. So the lesson I've learned from this is that the more draconian a law is, the less likely that we'll have the will to enforce it. Mr. President, you also made the point that the prisons are made, we have even changed their name now to correctional homes. The emphasis now is to correct, even though there are some that cannot be corrected. I think the point you have made for me is sufficiently clear that anything that has to do with the possibility of somebody spending all his life in prison or being sentenced to death merit real scrutiny. And we will be happy our brothers and sisters in the House of Rep by doing our own job, looking at it differently. We see in the US sometimes hard negotiations between the Congress and between the Senate. This can only go to enrich democracy. Neither the House nor the Senate should rubber stamp the decision of any of the chambers, so that the laws that comes through this bicameral legislature should have been filtered through, reduce all the impurities, and ensure that what we have passed reflect the will and the expectations of the Nigerian people. So I support what you have said, that let us take this thing back, look at it critically, fix a date, and then we pass it. Or we debate it with a view to passing it. I think you have summarized it, Mr. President. Thank you, sir.
Distinguished Senator Odende, you keep raising your hand. You are in charge of anti-corruption. Is there any aspect of this that has to do with corruption?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chairman, my name is Emmanuel Mengaudende. I represent Benue Northeast Senatorial District. I concur with all distinguished senators who talk about inelegant drafting of this bill. Apart from being inelegant, the definition is not all, the definition section is not all encompassing. Whereas heroin, cocaine, cannabis have been defined, LSD is not defined. So what is LSD? So the definition has to be encompassing. So I suggest that legal draftsmen should take a second look at this bill and then make it very, very elegant for us to pass it. That is my submission.
I think distinguished Senator Lalong wants to answer Senator Shumole that he used to sign for them to be executed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Most distinguished colleagues, Simon Lalong, Plateau South. Mr. President, I listened keenly on this bill. To me, it is timely for those of us who were governors, including Mr. President. Handling drugs is not an easy task. In the last 10 years, because I was a governor, that is the menace that is going on, especially amongst our youth. And these are some of the genesis of the insecurity that we are seeing all over. Sometimes when you go even to arrest bandits, part of it is the first thing to torment them is when you deny them of drugs. Today, it is now becoming a culture as a vogue and a vogue for our children in universities to say who takes the biggest drugs or who takes the most expensive drugs. Just last week, I was showing my colleagues a video that I saw, the discovery or the invention of a new drug they call Koros. That one, you take it, you go mad. You are mental completely. And so a lot of them are picked here from Abuja to mental homes. It is very, very sad. As we move on, like my brother comrade, distinguished comrade Osomole said, I know that from experience, the harder the penalty, the more the attempts to frustrate prosecution. It took me about 3 years to prosecute a drug baron in Jos. I realized that he was the one supplying all drugs all over North Central Zone. By the time we started prosecuting him, we suffered a lot of things, both from the judiciary, from the police, and even from the drug law enforcement agency. At the end of the day, we finally got him jail. The man is in prison in Jos. But what I also realized was that at the time that he was in jail, that was when he was also producing more drug barrels. We have to be very, very careful. I am saying this because we are talking about our children. But even the big ones are some strong, I don't want to say politicians, but I said strong individual billionaires in our midst. If we don't discourage this kind of thing, as you are fighting from the lower side, what you are leaving, the gap, is those that are above. Because at the time that he did that, we were even afraid the kind of people that were coming to visit the man in prison. So it is very, very timely that we look at it. This is not an opportunity to divide. Let us have the time, like Mr. President said, let us look at this holistically and come back with certain experiences and also definitions. Yes, there was public hearing at the House of Representatives. What were some of the contributions from the House of Representatives so that we can cover some of these loopholes because some of those definitions that we're talking about, new methods are coming, new drugs are being introduced that will not come into that kind of definition, that kind of definition, especially for the youth, where they are produced and where they are consumed. As far as I'm concerned, I realize that most of it are produced, sorry to say, around the south, but consumed in the north. Consumed in the north. Yes. Yes, I have evidence. I have my evidence. I will tell you. I will tell you.
Off the mic.
When I say south, when I say south, I didn't specify which area. I didn't say Edo. So, Mr. President, you have already said something, and for me, I'm very eager for us to walk away with this law. Go and have a thorough examination of it through our research officers, if we are not lawyers, and then come back and take full time to discuss this, because it will protect not only us, but protect our youth and generations to come. I so move. Thank you. I so support, sorry.
Distinguished Senator Lalong, for most of the Southern senators, I tried to stop him, but he had already accused you that most of the drugs are produced in the South and consumed in the North. I don't think that is totally correct. I would think that the only thing I know that is produced in the South and consumed in the North is cola nut. It's cola nut produced in the South and consumed more in the North. So it's that's the only thing I would know, is that it's produced in the South, consumed in the North, and worshipped in the East. Because there is nothing we do without using the cola nut to talk to our ancestors in the Southeast. So we produce it. That's the truth. But not drugs. So that, find out from that your drug baron where he used to get his supply from, because and then for those big men that visited him in prison, I'm sure they were his customers. And you found a difficulty in prosecuting him. It's everywhere, because they have a lot of money to spend, and so they try to frustrate prosecution. But congratulations that you succeeded at the end to do justice to the good people of Plateau State and Nigeria. I think we've discussed a lot on it, and everybody has agreed that yes, indeed, we need to go back and really study this and come up with something that will stand the test of time. And if we have to send the clerk back to London, Senator Lalong, please sit down.
To Senator Shomole's fact that governors refused, governors were not willing to sign. The role of civil societies were also there, because anytime you are going to sign a death warrant, you see human rights organizations everywhere and civil societies. Yes, they were coming with that. I know Mr. President will also experience that. So when we are going to do this, let us find a straight way, and also copying that kind of intervention as to when you are signing a death warrant.
Senator Shumole also made one observation. Senator Shumole, there was one observation you also made, that today we don't have prisons again in Nigeria, that what we have are correctional centers. So for hard drugs and their barons, should they go to correctional center or should they go to prison? So we may have to find out. we may have to, because if we don't have any prison in Nigeria, then it means that nobody should go to prison. Everybody should go to where you will be corrected. So I think it's something that we must tinker with the act to come up with a suggestion that they need to reintroduce prisons in Nigeria, in addition to correctional centers. So only those for reformation should go to correctional centers. But those hardened criminals who are bent on destroying the society should actually go to prisons. Because if we have only correctional centers, then you have no business bringing life imprisonment. Because the correctional centers are meant for interim measures to correct the person and reduce the person. So you have to think of it again, whether you need to bring back prisons. Because there are some people that really should be in prison for the society to be free. So, leader of the Senate, in view of the situation, you can just come up with a motion that we go back, tinker with this, and also involve the clerk, who in 1992 was trained in legal drafting.
Well, Mr. President, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, may I, by way of making my own contribution, say that it is obvious from the discussion that I've held there that it's not in overriding public interest that we proceed with this bill as presently written. But Mr. President, sitting as chair, in saying that we step it down till next week, there's a need for us to take a further step. Otherwise, we'll come back generally to pass comments on this. May I then suggest, sir, that we saddle both the leadership of the Senate Committee on Judiciary and Legal Matters, as well as the Senate Committee on Anti-Narcotics, to take further look into this on behalf of all of us, so that even though every other senator will still be able to comment, at least the leadership of those two committees will lead in the analysis of this bill. Because, Your Excellency, you were able to point out just two provisions, sections 13 and 14, which caught the attention of everyone here, and it has taken us this long to review. I wonder what happens with the consideration of sections 1 to 31, being the entire length of the bill. So if it makes sense, I will move that we saddle the leadership of both the committees on judiciary, legal matters, as well as the Committee on Drugs and Anti-Narcotics to take greater look into this and feed us back on the next legislative day by the time we are taking this bill. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, I second the motion that this bill be stepped down for further consideration and consultations. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that we do saddle this bill for concurrence. We should refer the bill to two main committees, the Committee on Judiciary and Legal Matters and the Committee on Narcotics and Drugs and other related offenses, to take a holistic look at this and then come back to us, and the two committees will lead the debate when we are coming to look at the clause-by-clause considerations. By that time, where there was inelegant drafting, they would have corrected most of those places, and then they would have done classifications and then necessary definitions to enable us pass this expeditiously. So those who are in support of the motion, first that we take this back to our various offices and also saddle the two committees on narcotics and legal matters with the responsibility of redrafting, redefining, classifying most of the provisions herein before presentation next week, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So the committees on narcotics and the committee on judiciary will have to sit together and go through this clause by clause and all the provisions for amendment and then bring back to us. And please, if there's anything you think you need to add to make it more stringent in order to curb the current explosion of drug use in Nigeria, please do so. Otherwise, we are destroying the future of this country. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, I stand to move that the Senate reverts to plenary to enable the chair report progress. I so move.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, I second the motion that the Senate do revert to plenary for the chair to report progress. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that this August Assembly do revert to plenary for the chair to report progress. Those who are in support of this say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. We now revert to plenary to report progress.
Distinguished colleagues, the Senate in the Committee of the Whole considered the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency NDLEA Amendment Bill 2024 and approved as follows. Constitutional Bill referred and referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Drugs and Narcotics for further Committee on Judiciary and Committee on Drugs and Narcotics for further legislative action. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? The Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the third order of the day is a House bill for concurrence as listed on the order paper. Distinguished senators will recall that this bill, which is the bill listed as Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons Bill 2024, HB 207, was read the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, 15th November 2024. Mr. President,
you may proceed.
Mr. President and respected colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this very important bill from the House of Representatives for concurrence. The bill on the control of small arms and light weapons was read on Wednesday, 15 November 2023, for the first time on the floor of this hallowed chamber. This bill simply seeks to provide for the control of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria and the establishment of a center to coordinate and implement activities to combat the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in our country, in line with the United Nations, the African Union, and the ECOWAS Convention and other international instruments and protocols on small arms and light weapons. Mr. President and respected colleagues, this bill went through rigorous legislative process, including public hearing in the House of Representatives, and was passed. I therefore urge you all to consider and support the second reading of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Mohamed Tahir Mugono.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished senators. My name is Mohamed Tahir Munguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Mr. President, distinguished senators, it may interest you to know that this bill was my bill in the House of Representatives. But during the pendency of the 9th Assembly, it didn't see the light of the day. But now it was resurrected by the 10th Assembly to the extent of now seeking our concurrence in the Senate. So I am eminently qualified to speak about this bill. Mr. President, distinguished senators, this bill is apt and germane not only against the backdrop of the fact that we are only doing the needful on the need to adhere to protocols and treaties that on our own volition, so motu, assented to be part and parcel of it. And that what this bill seeks to do is to further strengthen what we have already, a treaty that we have already signed into. Apart from that, Mr. President, distinguished senators, we are all aware of the avalanche of small arms and light weapons that is spread across the nooks and crannies of this country that has given non-state actors access to these small arms and light weapons and terrorizing our communities in form of Boko Haram, banditry, kidnapping, and what have you. So when a situation becomes so alarming like that, there is a need to create an agency or a center that will be charged.
Senator, distinguished senator, I don't need much contribution. It's a concurrence, and so then we'll move on. This is a bill for concurrence. We don't need much debate on it. So, okay, you can say something, but it doesn't. It's concurrence.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Yes, it is true the bill is for concurrence, and I quite agree it doesn't need much debating. But permit me, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, to chip in a word or two on the dangers of the proliferation of small arms to the security and well-being of Nigeria. For some of us, especially my constituency that is contiguous to the border, we see the dangers that this kind of unchecked activities pose in Nigeria. And I think it is assuming even a greater...
The eyes have it. The clerk.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for now to establish a national center for the coordination and control of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria and for related matters 2024. Second reading.
A bill for an act to establish a national center for the coordination and control of the proliferation of small arms and live weapons in Nigeria and for later matters 2024, second reading taken and passed. Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, pursuant to Order 78 sub 3 of our rules, I move at this time that the bill be now referred to the Committee of the Whole for consideration, and if it is so resolved that that the Senate then resolves to the Committee of the Whole. I so move, Mr.
Leader, may you second the motion?
I second the motion that the Senate, the bill on small arms and light weapons be referred to the Committee of the Whole for further consideration. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion moved by the leader and seconded by the minority leader, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 1, 2, and 3. Those in favor, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 4, 5, and 6. Those in favor, please say aye. Those against say nay. Clauses 7, 8, 9. And 10. Those in favor, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 11, 12, 13, and 14. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 5, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 19, 20, 21. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 22, 23, 24. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 25, 26, and 27. 29 and 30. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. 31, 32, 33. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. They have it. 34, 35, and 36. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clauses 37, 38, and 39. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 40, 41, 42. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. 43, 44, 45. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. 46. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. Clause 47. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. Explanatory memorandum. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The long title. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Chief Whip of the Senate, who also is the youngest senator in the 10th Senate, to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain Senator Peter Onyekachi Nwebonyi, representing the good people of Ebonyi Senatorial District of Ebonyi State.